welcome to another retro review with Kerr 9000. Today I'm going to be talking about Powerdrive on the Super Nintendo. Now, when I buy retro games, they tend to belong to one of three categories. A are games which I owned as a kid and I want to get again because I have fond memories of them and I'd enjoy playing them again. B are games I remember friends owning and which I have memories of playing at their house, and usually it's something I wished that I had, but I didn't have enough money or, limits got in the way. And C are games which I can get cheap and figure, what the heck, I'll give it a bash. Today's game comes from category B. I had quite a few friends at school and all of them owned one console or another, but the most owned console of the 16-bit age was probably the Super Nintendo. But even though most people seemed to have this machine, it didn't mean you'd play the same games at every house, because naturally different people had different tastes in games. So sometimes when I'd go and visit a friend, I'd get to play a game that I otherwise wouldn't have got to try. One particular friend was mad on sports. Cricket, football, boxing, motorcar racing. Basically any sport game, unless it was some kind of crazy sport or cartoonified punch-out, he'd have it. If it was serious, that'd be his thing. So one day I went round and had a new game. One I hadn't really heard much about, and this game was Powerdrive. The first thing I noticed on its case was that it was published by US Gold, which was a name I'd seen a lot earlier when I was a Spectrum owner, but at the time I'd never heard of the developer Rage Software. Okay, so US Gold, for those that don't know, was founded in Birmingham in 1984 as the publishing division for a software distribution company called Centresoft. Its primary reason for existence was to republish popular American computer games in the UK for the Spectrum and Amstrad CPC. The US Gold logo became a big part of our lives. US Gold no longer exists, and it turns out nor does Rage Software. Rage's first title, Striker, sold more than 1 million copies and established Rage as a major creative force within the interactive entertainment industry. But ironically, the very thing that started them off, a football title, would ultimately be their undoing. In 2000, Rage began to expand into publishing, but due to a long run of games that did not sell as well as expected, well, the lack of sales and the cost associated with their David Beckham franchise tend to be considered to be what ultimately led to the company going bankrupt in 2003. Anyway, back to Powerdrive. When my friend popped Powerdrive into the cartridge slot, I have to admit that it was nothing like what I expected. Putting it simply, Powerdrive is an arcade racing game based around rally driving. There's not a great deal of opening presentations of the game. You pick a car from an initial choice of 2, and then you start your career. The graphics are isometric, as you can see. You can see all of your car almost as if it's a remote controlled car that you're looking down at. And this might seem a little basic at first, but with the tricks under the game's bonnet, such as full sprite rotation and super smooth screen scrolling in every direction, you'll soon realise that what looks on paper like average graphics actually look a heck of a lot better when moving. There are a few tiny issues with screen flicker, but this mostly happens when the arrow that warns you of upcoming turns appears over the top of other objects. It's only a momentary issue, and you can still tell the direction the arrow's pointing, so it doesn't really affect your game. There are night levels, and the following might sound a little strange thing to praise, but the car's headlights are handled brilliantly. Both of the headlight beams are animated separately, which just looks brilliant. The two lights overlap each other, and it's just a great little touch, which I can't help but mention. Okay, well that's enough about cars and their headlights. It's time to talk about the backgrounds. They are, at first at least, they seem a little bit basic, and the tracks and the scenery both look a little plain. But they're full of subtle details which take into account the characteristics of the country you're in. The music is typical early 90s game music. I can't claim it's amazing, but then again it's not bad. Basically it does its job, which is to be moderately exciting and to muffle the engine noises, so that they don't become a pain in your butt. You can turn the music off if you'd prefer to hear your engine, or if you're going to play your own music while you play the game. The game has 3 types of stages. They're individual time trials, head-to-head races against the computer, and skill tests. There are 8 rounds of gameplay set across a range of countries. As you race, you get prize money for winning races, but it's important to note that the cost of repairing your car is very realistic compared to other games, meaning if you've repeatedly ping-ponged your car off the walls, then 90% of your prize money is going to be spent on knocking your car back into serviceable shape. You can race with a knackered car, but it becomes harder and harder to control and slower, and it's just not recommended. At first the game will seem hard because it doesn't control like a lot of the Snes racers, or at least not many of the widely popular ones. But if you've played either RPM racing or rock and roll racing, then Powerdrive will probably be down your alley. Once you get used to the controls though, it becomes a challenging but fun driving game. I'd give the game an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it back then, I still do today, and you can easily throw it on for a quick hour here and there. The game can be got around for around £10 to £15, and if you want to try it, I'd keep your eye on the various sites and try to grab a copy as close to the £10 mark as possible. The game's not widely talked about, and it doesn't seem to have any particular big cult following. It was also on the Mega Drive, which I talked about in a previous video, comparing it to a Namco game called Mega Tracks. Don't go there. And it was on the Atari Jaguar as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you have a great day.